Greetings, my brothers and sisters. Sending gratitude to all of you who are joining in today to accompany us down the rabbit hole of self-exploration through plant medicines. My name is Ryan Sprague, and I'm here to tell you that your frequency is now set and tuned to explore psychedelic medicines and the impact they've made among the countless psychonauts exploring the last true frontier. Buy a ticket and take the ride with me as we get true first-hand accounts of the experiences, benefits, risks, and transformations taking place within the ever-expanding world of psychedelic medicines on This One Time on Psychedelics. It is no mystery for any of you who have been following me for any length of time now that I am a huge proponent of the medicine of cannabis. That being said, and like I say often, even though this may be the most popular plant medicine in existence and the most widely used, I have also found that this plant is the most misunderstood, and the true nature of what this plant's role is within the human experience has been steeped in mystery for quite a long time, given the insane propaganda and smear campaigns put behind it over the last 80 to 100 years. Today's guest on the show is a man I had the pleasure of connecting with recently, and as soon as I did, I knew I had found someone who quote-unquote gets it, with regards to what the true value and medicine of this plant is. He is the owner of Blue Star Farms in Oklahoma, which is the first and only clean green certified regenerative cannabis farm in the country. And his mission is to allow people to experience the immense difference one can feel when connecting with cannabis that was grown in the earth, under the sun, just as Mother Nature intended for it to be, free of pesticides, herbicides, glyphosate, chemical salt nutrients, and anything else unnatural to nature. And in this episode, we take a deep dive into demystifying this medicine once and for all, so that all of you can benefit from the incredible wisdom and power this often looked plant medicine truly has within it. So please help me in welcoming my man JR, the Bear, Hindry, to the show. JR, aka Bear Hindry, dude, I am so excited to have you on the show. You know, as I shared in the intro, guys, when I met JR, I felt like I had met my other half. You know, I literally said to you multiple times during our intro call that I think I was in love with you, right? In a platonic way, because you guys will know, listeners rather, that I speak very often about, you know, the spiritual side of cannabis, how a lot of cannabis these days, even though it's such a medicinal plant, is being grown to end up poisonous. You know, all these people that are getting into it, a lot of them with not exactly the best intentions and things of that nature. And I'm sure you guys are sick of hearing me on my soapbox, right? So I wanted to have JR on because JR has a lot more experience in this realm than I do, right? He's been in this realm a lot longer. And he's seen a lot of these things, you know, transpire over the course of his career in cannabis and everything going on. And that was a big part of what he's now doing with Blue Star Farms and them being the first clean green certified regenerative cannabis farm in the entire country, which is absolutely amazing. And we're going to get into what that means and, you know, a lot of the different things that he would suggest in terms of how to empower you to walk away from this episode, understanding more of what to really look for. And spoiler alert, it's not how much THC there is or how pretty the flower looks. But with that being said, JR, my man, how you doing today, bro? So excited to have you here with me.
Ryan, I'm wonderful, brother, and I'm so grateful for you and the work that you're doing. So thank you for bringing me on to help share this message and sharing your soapbox. And it's comforting to meet a brother that's also on this soapbox, and it's amazing what you're doing, brother. So thank you so much for inviting me here to share this space with you and connect with your audience. And such beautiful work, brother. Thank you.
Oh, dude, you're so welcome, man. And, you know, it was so funny, guys. You know, when JR and I first connected, we got connected through a mutual friend of ours, Angela. Shout out to Angela for the awesome connection. And Angela went through Connect with Cannabis back when we had just that one course and we were doing it as a group program. And she was so amazing. And when she reached out to me and said, hey, I have a friend in cannabis I'd like to connect you with. Is that okay? I was like, of course. You know, because for me, and, you know, listeners, I've said this a couple times before, but for me, it's been a weird world getting into what I do because in a way, I haven't really been a part of the cannabis industry / community. And I like that transfer of language that you utilize there. But, you know, I haven't really been a part of that world since I left the dispensary because a lot of what I was seeing was kind of the toxic culture. And not that that's all there is, right? But I kind of just got really like jaded around it. And I was like, you know what? Like I started creating all this stuff and I started realizing that the kind of people I was talking to were more spiritual seekers that just so happened to connect with cannabis. And now at this point, I got a idea about, maybe 4 months ago that it was like time to start bringing this to the world of actual cannabis, right? Like start bringing this into the cannabis community, start, really sharing this in more dispensaries and things like that. And really start bringing people into, conscious cannabis and really the real power of cannabis. Once we got connected and we started diving in, it was so apparent that you understand some of the things that just popped into me. Like, when I talk about the energy of the grower who grew your medicine being very important, that wasn't something I read from a scientific study. It was a download, a idea I got while on the medicine. A lot of what I've created these courses around have been those ideas just channeling through me. And so I remember when we hopped on our intro call, I knew right away you were the GOAT, because one of the first things you said was, yeah, one of the things people aren't talking about is the energy of the grower who's growing this medicine. And I was like, dude, that's when I was like, bro, I think I'm in love with you, dude. Like, I've been trying to find more people that understand this, because a lot of people will be like, show me the science, as if literally someone else's experiment should tell them anything about their own subjective universe. But, I'd love for you, man, if, we could share a little bit about your journey, man, and how you first got into cannabis. I know agriculture is your spiritual practice. You come from a lineage of farmers. But when did this start shifting for you from, and maybe it was always this way, but, how did you get intro to cannabis? And we can include other psychedelics and other medicines into that too. I know that you're a big deadhead. You've been on tour with Fish and all of these things. So just tell us some of your story, man. I'm super excited to hear more about it, brother, and how it traversed into you really taking the initiative to start this clean green project in America and move from NorCal to Oklahoma, aka the Death Star of cannabis, and start to liberate it and bring light right from within. So how did all this start, man?
Well, as Lewis Carroll said, we'll begin at the beginning. The bus came by and I got on. That's when it all began, brother. That literally, it's a dead lyric and often quoted, but in my case was very true. I had left home at an early age. I grew up on a sustainable homestead, and agriculture was always a passion. And then I read a lot of Louis L'Amour books in my early teen years, and I really wanted to go be a cowboy. And so I packed up my truck just shortly after my 16th birthday and headed west to cowboy. And in between jobs, while at a truck stop, a bunch of heads came by on a bus, and I literally got on, and that led me going back to the Emerald Triangle there in Northern California, and working that fall for a few weeks, literally only a few weeks as a trimmer before the guys that ran that farm were like, hey, this farm kid needs to put the scissors down and come with us. And that was really the beginning of the journey. As far as the commercial cultivation of cannabis goes. But there were obviously some twists and turns in there with my relationship with both the plant as a medicine and the plant as a farmer, because I got to kind of live through the major transitions of cannabis as an industry, right? It was a community, and it was an underground community, because it had to be for safety, right? And then Prop 215 took a little while to get going. At first, the folks that I was around were like, what exactly is this? What does it mean? What are the ramifications? How do we play ball with this new game? And it didn't take long, literally just a few years, for that to get really wild and crazy. Number one, cannabis value was worth a lot of money back then. And so while it started, Prop 215, the gentleman that wrote it had some very good intentions, and the people involved in it had some very good intentions as a powerful medical healing medicine. And I fully admit I didn't recognize it at first until until I saw that happen with people that were dealing with things like Parkinson's and such. And then it didn't take long before it turned into an industry, right? Like, when someone falls into a pile of money for the first time or has great success as an entrepreneur, there is almost always a big challenge there. And I fully admit that I went through that, right? I think I refer to it as our gangster hippie era as a culture, right? Because it got big. And then, it was only, 8-9 years later that Colorado passed, and that had a big impact on things as the industry grew, but it also shifted, right? Because traditionally cannabis moved from west to east, and it was a very simplified supply chain, right? Like, the farther you get from the source, the higher the price went up. And there were all these things that we've all played. And somewhere in there, in the midst of my own tragedies that came with this, because we all, need to remember there was a time that even though things might have been legal as a state, cultivators like myself were literally hunted by military forces called camp. And it was, military that they would come after us. And they didn't just, it wasn't like cops where 10 guys knocked on your door, bro. Like it was military MRAP vehicles and freaking armored personnel carriers and helicopters. It was freaking nuts, dude. And the beauty of chaos is order, right? After the fall comes the rise. And somewhere in amidst all of those tragedies that I experienced myself, I began to ask myself the question, why, right? Because if you go through a tough or challenging or turn to ashes type of experience, that's the natural thing that happens, right? That's typically why nature pushes us to those edges, is to ask that question, why? And I realized when I asked myself that why, I was ashamed of the answer. And so I sat with other medicines to reflect on my own heart and why I had created that reality for myself, and to get to the root. And that was when I discovered that I wasn't acting in alignment with what Spirit had shown me, what I knew in my heart to be true, and that I needed to correct that. And so that was when everything shifted for me, as with a relationship with the plant and as a cultivator of the plant, and realized that if all of these energies are now coming in because of this monetary thing and the industry that's being created, I knew where I wanted to stand as a part of that. And that was a place of holiness, right? I wanted to find myself in a place where my actions were in alignment with healing and with love and with light, because I recognize what happens when I wasn't in alignment with those things, and of the very powerful question, well, if I can create that, then what else can I create? And I wanted to harness that in the right way. And so I really just sunk deep into my love for healing, my love of biodynamic agriculture, which is a spiritual science, and a spiritual approach to agriculture. And things shifted, and eventually that led to Oklahoma here. And yes, it is a lot of the things that people hear about happening in Oklahoma are very true. But there's been a major shift that I've seen and witnessed just literally in the last 6 or 7 months. Of once upon a time when we'd go into dispensaries and have this conversation about our medicine and why it's different, and our clean green certification and how we're the first clean green certified regenerative farm in their global program. 99% of them a year ago, they didn't care. The conversation was about what's the THC percentage, how much money I can make on it. That's it. Now that has drastically shifted, And I'm so happy to see that. It feels good as a whole for the collective, because cannabis is an interesting medicine, right? You know this.
Yeah.
She gives us a choice that most other plant medicines don't open for us, right? Like most of the time when we sit with a plant medicine, we're going into the abyss, and whatever we're karmically prepared for in that moment is our experience. The power of cannabis, I think at least a portion of it, lies in this wonderful choice of, do you want this to be a narcotic and turn off? Well, then we can do that. Do you want this to be a prayer to connect? We can do that. Do you want this to be a specific healing? Well, we can do that. She shows us the power of intention in a very unique way. And I think choice is really the key word, both as a consumer and as a farmer.
Yeah, 100%, man. And dude, man after me own heart. I'll say it over and over again. Like, these are things that I have been screaming from the rooftops, not from any science or anything, but just what's been resonating into my being for the last 5 years. And for me, this all started when, I got to see with my own eyes. I mean, again, cannabis had already helped me with my anxiety. And by helped me, I mean, I was 16 and I just really used it as a narcotic to turn off what was going on. And even at that level, though, it did support me, right? it was allowing me to survive at that point, really not thrive, but that was completely up to me. And as I got into the world of cannabis and started training at New England Grassroot Institute, which was the school I went to up here for cannabis, which was still the funniest thing that opened in Boston in 2011. It's like the weirdest, pattern interrupt ever, And, when I went to that school, I got to see a real different side of cannabis. I got to see people whose lives were being saved from cannabis, right? And at that time, that was still when, a lot of stories of getting raided and whatever like that were happening. So at the same time, it was such a weird time to exist because you're hearing Schedule 1, right, which is cannabis has been in for, an innumerable amount of years, which is so silly because a lot of people don't realize that the same government that tells you there's no medicinal value holds a patent on cannabis as a neuroprotectant. So really what they're saying is it's not medicinal, except in the fact that it's so medicinal, we have a patent for it, right? So, again, it's really funny how, like the last 4 years, for instance, right, the interesting stuff that's happened, how many people trusted the government. Whereas I feel like for us that are in the world of cannabis, we knew for a long time, like, hey, these people really aren't the people you should trust with your health, with your decisions, etc. So it's very interesting to see how that supported me moving into my life. But once I saw this plant literally cure cancer in people and start, not only that, right? It wasn't just like, hey, take a pill and cure cancer, right? It wasn't like that. It was like how it cured cancer for people was that it allowed them to get into the pain they were living in. And it allowed them to start talking about it and expressing and crying and getting angry and whatever those emotions were that had piled up and led to that dis-ease state in the beginning. It was able to start letting that stuff out. And I started witnessing this with my own two eyes. And at the same time, right, these people were going to Dana-Farber in Boston, the quote unquote best cancer center in the world. And they were coming in after going there the first time with their scans, stage 3, stage 4, many different types of cancers. Then they would start working with Mike, Melissa, myself, and some of the other interns. And a series of months later, they would come back in. Hey, look, no tumors. And Dana-Farber was perplexed, right? They had no idea how this was happening. They would tell them, they'd say, what are you doing? And they say, oh, we're taking cannabis oil. And they go, no, that can't be it, right? So I was seeing this weird, kind of like I'm seeing it, but they're not, validating it. And so it was a very interesting time to exist in that world. And, for me, I only got into cannabis in like 2007, so I'm a later bloomer, in terms of I'm only 33. But it's amazing to hear these things because I've heard a lot of these stories and I used to watch all the Discovery Channel shows and everything like that. And I was fascinated with it. I've always been fascinated with cannabis ever since I first found it because I've always resonated with living my life like a pirate, being free of all contracts, getting out of the system, getting out of the matrix, all of that. So when I realized that cannabis was something that the powers that shouldn't be were going after, I was like, I want more of that, because if they're saying it's bad, it's got to be good. I usually take the opposite of whatever the government says, so just really amazing, man, to be able to chat with you about these things because you're 100% right. Like I tell everyone that, right now in society, there's kind of this great awakening happening, right? So there's people like you and I, people that listen to the show that are very aware of these unseen realms and, these qualitative aspects of life, right? Like intention and things like that a lot of people are still struggling to understand because they're not a, written down scientific metric that can be measured and seen with our regular vision, right? They're part of that realm that we don't really see, but we must have faith in order to enact the power there. And I always say that what would be easier, right? Trying to convince the world to go meditate for a year and maybe they'll get some downloads, or start sharing with them like, hey, you're already connecting with cannabis. Just start experimenting, even if you think it's silly, with telling the plant what you want out of it. Well, what happens the first time that person realizes, oh my God, it worked? Now they're going to realize, well, what the hell was that? What happens if I do that to my food, my water, my relationships? When I go have a conversation with my children, if I make an intention first, what is that going to do? I don't know what that ripple effect will be, JR, but I believe it to be big, so I'm so excited you're talking about this. Yo, what is up, everybody? I hope you were enjoying the show, and I wanted to take a second while I had your ear to tell you about an upcoming event that I am hosting that I am beyond excited about. On August 15th, 7 p.m. Eastern, we are hosting our next Breathe with Cannabis event, and this month's theme is that of ancestral healing. For those that are hearing about these workshops for the first time, they are a 2.5-hour live cannabis and breathwork ceremony hosted online through Zoom that you can attend right from the comfort of your own living room with an amazing community of like-minded individuals from all around the world. These workshops are an absolutely incredible way for any of you who have been looking to open up the psychedelic powers I speak of often with cannabis on the show to be able to do so, and we want you to experience it for yourself. To find out more info on this month's theme, the breakdown of the event, and to register and save your spot, head to the link in the show notes, and I am so looking forward to guiding all of you into ancestral healing through the powers of cannabis and breathwork. Enjoy the rest of the show.
Absolutely. It's beyond our ability, I think, to see right now just how big that is. And frankly, I'm fine with that because focusing on my little piece is more than enough. But I think you hit on a huge point there. I want to pull a string on of she is an unraveler, right? That is her nature, right? Whether that's emotional unraveling or a mental unraveling, like an unwinder, a communicator, and that is her nature. And I want to kind of lay out an analogy for you and your listeners. We all have an individual nature that we show up here with, right? Now, different dogmas and theologies will help explain that to you, but let's just call it that for now, right? There's a nature that is inherent within me. There's a nature that is inherent within you. Now, depending on external circumstances, it can take a while to discover that nature and really let it bloom, right? I can have this nature, but if I had a childhood where I didn't feel safe, right, and I was told to shut up and in different energetic ways that can repeated this pattern, then 20 some odd year old me would still be expressing some portion of that nature, but it would take me a while to really unwind, and I would have to really work to do that because it doesn't just happen on its own spontaneously. There's always choice, right, for that full nature to be expressed. Now let's use that exact same thing we laid out and apply it to cannabis and cultivation. However she's cultivated, there is going to be a piece of her nature there that all of the Monsanto poison in the world won't be able to completely beat out of her. But it is going to be there in a much smaller and proportionate part. Cannabis is a bioaccumulator. I'm sure a lot of your listeners have heard that. And what that means is in the physical realm, whatever her roots are in, she accumulates. In fact, she can be used to remediate heavy metals in soils, right? So whatever she's in, she is going to pull up. Put that in your pocket. Now let's talk about a hermetic principle here. And also a quantum physics has shown the same thing. Before anything happens in the physical plane, it happens in the etherical plane, or it happens in the quantum field, right? So if she is a bioaccumulator, then we also know that she is an energetic or a spiritual accumulator as well, right? So how she is cultivated ends up being a response to how much of this true nature can be expressed. Or in a biological way, we could say, what is her true genetic expression happening? And that can only happen in a system with choice. And standard cultivation, and just so that we're clear with your listeners, when I say standard cultivation, we're literally talking about if you're buying cannabis, either on the traditional market or in a dispensary, either one, about 99%, maybe even more than 99%, is grown in a manner that would make the chemist and agronomist behind Bayer and Monsanto, these type of huge ag companies, it would make them drool to think about being able to pump that much chemicals into a soybean. Right? They can't because it's in the ground and some of that's going to run off. They literally are locking her roots in a cage. They're plugging in, essentially an IV into that cage where her root zone exists, and they are force feeding exactly what they believe she needs on that day, right? That plant has zero choice. It is literally an analogy to think about as a person on life support, right? Some doctors have thought about it and said, okay, this person needs all of these things in an IV to survive. No one would look at that person and go, oh, wow, they're thriving. Are they alive? Yes, absolutely. That is exactly how we all need to picture 99% of this cannabis being cultivated, because that is exactly how it's being cultivated. And the person behind it cares about one thing: money.
Mm-hmm.
Because you would not be cultivating that way if that wasn't your motivation. There's no point in even having a discussion about it. If you're cultivating that way, your motivation is simply money. On the other hand, in a true organic, biologically enriched system, I have no control as a farmer over what that plant is eating. Multiple times a second, there's a communication in that plant's root zone, right, where it's sending off these different compounds that the biology wants to eat. It's their little reward. And multiple times a second, it's saying, I want this, I want that. And the biology runs and gets it. And it is a community of high speed intelligence going back and forth and working together. So a few things happened there. Number one, the plant had complete choice instead of force. And let's think about the vibration right there between those two words. In one system, there was choice. In the other, there was force. Which one of those do you want to inhale? And then on the other piece of that is, in one system, there was no room for communication. She was told to shut up and take it. In the other system, there is an infinite web of intelligence. The way that these systems work, science has discovered mycorrhiza communicating across the Atlantic, right? From northern Canada to northern Europe. There are trees that they have seen via the electrical signature of these root zone mycorrhizas communicating with one another. It's been documented across farther distances that we can comprehend how they're able to do it. So when this taps into that intelligence, they are literally tapping into the Earth's infinite communication system. That is a giant difference. And the last piece is what you noted, right? Just like we said, if someone's cultivating in that traditional sense, there's clearly only one driver. The same is true on the opposite end. What we do is a lot of work. It takes a lot of passion to pull off a regenerative farm like we do at scale. This is a lot of work. It's a big challenge. It takes a lot of study. It takes a lot of understanding. It takes a lot of heart connection. It takes a lot of caring. So clearly then, yes, we need to eat too. I like paying my bills, don't get me wrong, but that's not our driving force. I believe firmly in the principle of do good works and good rewards come. But if my purpose is to get those rewards, then my purpose gets lost. I have to stay focused on we're going to do good works that heals our community, that brings healing to our tribe, that brings healing to our society, that brings healing to the earth, the soils, the air, the wind, the water, all our relations. A giant difference. And so that nature of the plant that we were discussing, always there, but holy smoke, does everything change when we experience a plant that was cultivated in that manner with choice and love and connection.
Dude, perfectly stated, bro. And if we think about it this way too, right? How we do anything is how we do everything. Or another way to say that is as within, so without, as above, so below, right?
Oh.
So if we understand that right now trauma is very big, right? In the world I work in, coaching, etc., there's a lot more emphasis around childhood trauma, ancestral trauma, this word trauma, right? And we know it with animals too, right? What happens if we are around a dog that was bred to be a fighting dog, right? Do we blame the dog or do we blame the owner, first of all? And then what's our experience of being around a dog like that? It's very challenging, right? We may get injured, right? That dog may bite us, whatever, right? So when we look at human beings, what do we understand about trauma? That if you're around someone or dating someone with a lot of trauma, there's a lot of distortion that person has to work through to be able to become the person they're meant to be in this realm, right? To allow their soul to shine. So if that exists in animals, if that exists in humans, why does it not exist in plants? This is what I get so confused about in the modern day world, right? Even with diets like the vegan and vegetarian diet, right? Like choose whatever you want, right? Like choose whatever's in alignment with you. But the idea that you're not killing things is just silly to me, you know, like everything has life to it, right? It's just like the animists viewed the world. And now what Jamie Wheel calls coming back to holism, right? Kind of like animism, but a comeback, not a go back, you know? And so, you know, again, if we look into these things and we start realizing, just like you said, that, you know, for many people listening, I don't know if I ever mentioned this before, but just like you were saying, it's a bioaccumulator. They're actually using hemp, right, which is literally cannabis. They're literally the same plant, to clean up Chernobyl, right? So you think about one of the worst natural disasters, or worst, not natural disasters, worst disasters that human beings have caused in the world. One of them is Chernobyl. And what is repairing that? Hemp/cannabis. So now you put that into exactly what you said, and you start asking yourself, right? Now, again, I usually tell people that if you're someone, I guarantee that no one who would do this listens to this show, right? Because they'd probably already gotten triggered and told me to fuck off. But, again, like, if you are someone who's going out and shopping for your food like gasoline, right, your water like gasoline, trying to find the cheapest prices, then this message is not for you, straight up, right? It's not for people like that. Who it is for is those of you listening that prioritize eating healthy food, that understand that you're only as good as what you're putting into your body, that you're only as good as the decisions you're making and where you're putting your money. This message is for those of you that really put intention into every single aspect of your life. Because why would you, being someone like that, then go and be out of alignment by purchasing cannabis that's inferior and is traumatized, right? Because not only are you going to have to go through that experience and potentially have challenges, or best case, just not get to experience the real magic of cannabis, but you're also putting your money into the hands of the powers that shouldn't be, that are then giving them more money to keep going like this, right?
Right.
And the only way that we can stop this, right, instead of, we're not going to protest or anything like that, doesn't really do anything. What we do is we re-educate people on how to make better and more informed choices. And we start sharing with them, hey, you can grow this at home. And actually, when you're growing your own medicine, it becomes a whole new level of spiritual. Because, again, if cannabis is a bioaccumulator, and like you said, JR, if everything starts in the realm of spirit or quantum before it comes down, and it goes from the spirit to the mental to the emotional, then into the physical, then we start understanding that, when you start growing your own medicine and then you start connecting with it, it's also a way for you to get to know yourself more, right? Because now, if you're connecting with that medicine and you're starting to feel something that is maybe anger or something like that, you can't say, oh, it's this so-and-so, or, oh, I don't know where I bought it. No, it was you that grew it, right? So it's an ability to see yourself more. And the plant will gift you that for being able to have it grown in the way that allows the plant to thrive the same way we all want. The analogy is, imagine how grateful you are to your parents when you get older, when you realize how amazing they did at raising you, how they had never done this before. They had never been the age they were before, but they allowed you to see them as superheroes, right? They put themselves second in place of you, right? Like, we all know what that does when we're a kid of parents like that. I was fortunate enough to have parents like that really did put me first, that always made sure to make sure I was loved and knew I was loved and everything. And no one's perfect, right? And I didn't expect them to be perfect. But looking back in hindsight, I'm so grateful for that. Think about what a plant thinks. Think about how a plant feels when it's grown in a system like you're talking about, right? When you realize, as a steward, not I'm going to dominate nature, but I'm a steward. The best thing I can do is learn to work with what nature has already perfected and be able to create the perfect buffet for this plant to take what it needs in every microsecond that it needs. And I'm hands off. I know it's a very humbling thing to realize that I'm not going to be able to outsmart nature, nor would I ever want to.
Right.
The best thing I can do is learn to work with it and be a steward of it. So 100% agreed, man.
Biology is so infinitely more brilliant than we currently understand. And when we look at how much has been discovered in the world of microbiology just in the last 10 years, it's almost dizzying to wrap your head around the healing power that some of these biologies have, right? And how they work, right? There's farming in general, as you were saying, like, this whole healing process happens because when we connect with nature, we understand nature, then we understand ourselves, because somehow or another this notion became a thing where, as a society, we act like we're not part of nature. We are absolutely as much nature as the tree and the grass and the clouds. And we realize our place in that sacred hoop. And then we realize just how brilliant that sacred hoop is. And it's humbling. And we also realize how healing happens, because we're all moving in the same direction. One of the beautiful principles of biology that I work with as an organic and regenerative farmer, right, is mainly my job is really just multiplying beneficial biology over and over and over again in all kinds of different diverse ways, and adding more biology. What is that doing? How is that helping? It's the biological principle of competitive exclusion, right? Where there is enough of the good guys, the bad guys can't come in.
Mm-hmm.
Holy smoke, what a principle to wrap your head around. So, in other words, what we're seeing nature demonstrate is when there is a vibration of a certain, then other vibrations, they can't do anything about it. So, what a powerful thing that applies to me as an individual, right? Of if I can hold myself and stay grounded and centered in a certain place, then we've all experienced that, right? Like all of the storms in the world can't move us. You know, I certainly haven't perfected that space, but it's a powerful thing to witness as a family, right? We can keep that in mind as a family, as a tribe of our friends. Like, what a powerful thing to realize. And here is the even bigger, more amazing part, right? Is as we're building these regenerative systems on the farm for years, we're adding beneficial biology, adding beneficial biology, adding beneficial biology. But it hits a certain point where it rolls on its own. It has enough of all of that to continue to multiply and wrap your head around, right? That is an amazing principle to realize. There's a certain point where the vibration is high enough, the health is strong enough, the vigor is there in such a way that it no longer needs outside input.
Dude, it's the coolest thing ever, man. And you're bringing up some really good points there, right? That, if we look at the Law of one of my favorite spiritual texts, they talk about this idea of negative and positive polarity. And that in the eyes of God or creator, right, there's no bad or good, right? There's just experience, right? There's just knowing and there's just, curiosity. And so there are these powers that shouldn't be, right, that are playing a very pivotal role. They're allowing us to choose love every single day and say, we're not that, we choose to be this. So I don't mean to speak about any of these, individuals that are negatively polarized as if they're evil or just bad and not good or, useless or any of that, because they are very useful. And what you're showing there, right, is that when you have enough positive bacteria, right, positively polarized bacteria, right, aerobic bacteria is one way to say it, right, versus anaerobic bacteria, but there's so many different ways you can look at it and so many different things in the kingdom of fungi, bacteria, et cetera, and organisms. But, when you have enough positively polarized bacteria, the negative polarity, right, the negatively polarized bacteria and other organisms will not be able to thrive there. Why? Not because they couldn't try to fight them, but because they don't exist on the positive polarity. Like they cannot exist on that energy source because they come from a state of fear. They come from a state of lack. And in the positive polarity, they come from love, right? And so when you have enough love in your life, you are unfuckwithable, right? To the powers that shouldn't be, because they don't thrive on love. They can't. It's like a fish trying to breathe outside of water or us trying to breathe underwater. It just doesn't work, right? There's nothing you need to do, right? There's nothing that the water has to do when you're under it to try to make you not breathe water. You just can't, And so these things are built into the rhythm of the planet and the rhythm of life. And the more that we can just naturally tap into this, the less we have to do. And so in a way, right, like the same way that biodynamic farming, like you said perfectly, is a spiritual practice, as within, so without, as above, so below, right? It's the same process we go through also as organisms of planet Earth, right? That as we start to band together and work together in the frequency of love, well, they are not able to touch us anymore. I mean, we are seeing that happen right now with the decentralized movement and all of these things, right? Them saying, we're going to charge you higher interest rates. And we say, no, thank you. We'll just get into crypto and we won't need you at all anymore. And you know what? We can come our own banks. And you know what? You can keep your credit scores too. We don't need those also, right? And the analogy here is when you have enough good bacteria, we don't need your pesticides. We don't need your fungicides. We don't need your herbicides. We don't need any of these things, rodenticides. We don't need any of the things, right? Because the good guys, right, are positively polarizing. And because of that, the negative polarity, right? Those organisms cannot thrive there. They can't even exist there, So again, it's so amazing to see how this all works together. And, I know we were talking about it briefly when we were on our intro call, but this is what my whole idea was with the course Grow with Cannabis, right? Because I started to realize, like, not only are you growing a plant that can help you in your life, but the growing stages itself can tell you a lot about your own life. Like, one of the questions I ask right in the beginning is, and during the seedling stage, I say, where are you currently a seedling in your life? And are you treating yourself as such, or are you treating yourself like a full grown tree? You know, are you being too hard on yourself because you're just starting something new and you expect to be the best at it right off the bat? Are you getting jaded of those things? And it's very similar to when you're growing a plant, right? You know, as well as I do, when you have a seedling, you got to be really careful with it. But once it's, you know, getting up there, you can bend it, you can top it, you can do all these things with it. And the plant's like, yeah, man, do whatever you want, right? I'm strong enough to handle it now. And the same thing happens as we start to develop ourselves, right? And when we're a seedling, right? When we're just waking up, things are really scary, right? We don't really know where to put things. We don't really know who we are, right? We're figuring things out. But as we start to get a little older, right, and a little wiser, and we start to have our cell walls thicken and things like that, you know, insults that people give us can roll right up and off of us. We're like, oh, actually, thank you for that. It allowed me to either see something new, or it allowed me to realize that I don't want to be part of this friendship or relationship anymore. And thank you for that. Not with any, you know, sarcasm or anything, but thank you for the opportunity to see that, you know? So again, like, there's so much that is exactly the same. I mean, literally everything in life works in this way, but it's really cool to be able to articulate this, because I really feel like this is what I want people to understand when they're connecting with cannabis, right? Or insert thing here, food, whatever it is, right? Because again, how we do everything, how we do anything is how we do everything. And so when we're connecting with cannabis that is grown in these, you know, life support type systems under high pressure sodium lights or LED lights that are not mitigated with any biogeometry, and there's all these EMFs and radio waves just annihilating the plant's biofield, and then we're connecting with that, what does it mean about how we're treating ourselves as well, right? What does it mean about, again, because if how we do anything is how we do everything, where else in our life are we thinking that that's the best we can have, right? The best we deserve and the best that we are, you know? So again, as we start making more informed and wise choices into what we're putting in our body and what we're connecting with, we naturally start thinking about, well, where are we putting our money? How are we treating our loved ones? How do we want to be remembered when we leave this planet? What do we want our legacy to be? And this creates a snowball effect, you know, and this is exactly what's happened to me. And I'm so grateful for meeting you, man, because you know, I've been doing it long enough now that, you know, there's been many other people that have hit me up and said, wow, I felt that, but I've never met an elder, man, that, you know, has been doing this longer than me, that understands this stuff and can articulate it so beautifully, man. So I'm fucking over the moon about this.
Thank you, brother. You know, you hit some key points there, man. You know, a bunch of really key points. You know, as a consumer, because look, not everybody's going to be a farmer, right? Like that's always been that way. Even when we had the right balance of farmers to non-farmers, not everyone was a farmer. So you know, if you're a consumer, you know, mind the source, right? Because just like you said, you know, if you're the type of person that doesn't, you know, care about what you're putting into your body, then I guess it doesn't matter. But when you're dealing with a vibrational spiritual medicine, it really does matter in a big way. You know, so be mindful there. If you're a home cultivator, there are amazing techniques. But I want to add to that. We're seeing a resurgence in something that I find beautiful, of another resurgence of the back to the land movement. I'm a passionate farmer that comes from a long family of unbroken chain of farmers. One of the other things that cannabis does, you know, is she's a tool for me as an individual, you as an individual. She's a tool for us as a community. But in cultivated in the right way, I've seen it in these beautiful heady communities, you know, in the Pacific Northwest that I came up in. She can be a powerful tool in a way that supports a community as well. And so I would encourage people, look, there's going to be two things that happen in commercial cannabis. One is going to be your standard, you know, what I call a booth factory.
Yeah.
You know, that is going to be the majority. And as we're seeing these rescheduling conversations happening, that's just going to get bigger. Big farmers going to come in and, you know, super booth the super booth. And all that's going to do its thing. But that also creates another space, right? And I would love to see, and I believe wholeheartedly it can happen, that there's a lot of people that want to escape Babylon and live a connected to the earth lifestyle, you know, this back to the land lifestyle. But the question becomes, you know, economic viability, right? There is always going to be a need for healthy, regeneratively grown, high vibration cannabis. And there's absolutely space for that. You know, there's very few farms here in Oklahoma for instance, this big industry that are cultivating in a organic or regenerative or high vibrational type of way. It's an extreme minority. And so that's wherever you are, wherever you're looking at possibly homesteading, it can be a tool to bring back the family farm, is my point. We've seen the family farm be decimated statistically here on this continent. And I believe that she can help us bring that back in a very viable way, where she wants to help us that way, right? Like, why would she not? Look at it from that universal cosmic perspective. And of course she wants to help bring us that. That brings healthier families connected to the earth that understand natural rhythms and natural cycles, and that grows out, So of course she wants to help us do that, and however I can help do that, I'm all about it. I don't see fellow organic regenerative farmers as competition. That's hysterical.
Yeah.
We are supporting one another. Our competition, if that exists, is those pathogenic bacterias that in the human world manifest as big pharma, government, etc.
Yeah, 100%, man. Dude, I'm so fucking fired up right now. I think I could go through a brick wall with how much energy I have, and it's so amazing you're saying this, because what I see there too is that what is true cannabis culture? Like I always look at Bob Marley, right? Like kind of like the ultimate epitome of what I believe to be true cannabis culture, right? Even as that guy became a national superstar, right? And a worldwide superstar, he chose to go back to Jamaica as soon as he could, hang out in the same house he was raised in, and just wanted to play soccer and hooked up his family, friends, etc. with the money he made, And for me, that's what this plan has done for me, is helped me realize that I can play my small role, right, alongside many other people playing their small roles. And if we all allow our roles to link together, we can do anything in the world. And that is what I feel the real lesson that cannabis has to teach us is, right? That you can be exactly who you want to be in this world. And the only kind of fuel to do that is to tap more and more into the only thing in the universe that actually exists objectively, which is love, the governing force of the universe, where we're all looking to get closer to and back to. And when we start consuming cannabis, typically it's around a fire, right? We're all together. It naturally, like when I connect with cannabis, I want to reach out. I want to talk to others. I want to see how I can be more of service. And, again, if you think about it this way, like I'm in the world of coaching. And, I see cannabis and other plant medicines as a coach of sorts, right? And, the analogy being that a lot of people are out there, myself included for many years, right? So I'm not judging, but I see a lot of people out there that are expecting cannabis to fix them, right? Or fix their life. And this happens in the world of coaching too, right? It's one of the things that as a coach, I have to be very aware of and watch out for, is that people aren't gurutizing me, right? And thinking like, Ryan will fix me. It's like, no, I don't fix shit. All I do is I witness you sharing things with me. And from an objective standpoint, I look to find where there's a distortion, and I repeat back what they said. And I say, is this accurate? And then if it is, and they believe it and they say that's accurate, okay, right? I'm not going to interfere with their free will. It's not my place to try to push my own projections onto others, no matter how amazing and holier than thou they may feel, right? And, I'm very grateful for my mother because she taught me this lesson. Here I am, Mr. Holistic Health, getting into all this stuff. And my mom and dad did not grow up in a time like I did, right? I don't blame them, right? They just didn't. They had a totally different upbringing, right? Their parents were coming out of the Great Depression. And so for them, the main thing they heard was just get a job you can be safe at. That was the most important thing, because survival was what their parents were really focused on. At that point, they were still having high quality food, even if they couldn't afford much, because everything was being grown by hand, right, in their yards and farms. But at the end of the day, if we expect cannabis or insert thing here, coach, teacher, food, whatever, to fix us, then it's out of energetic balance, right? And what I always say with cannabis, right, just to use that little microcosm, is that intention is the first equalizer. It's the first thing that shows the plant, oh, okay, you're not an infant anymore. Now I can start showing you some more stuff, but I can only show you to the level that you're willing to see, because we have free will, right? And like you were saying, this is the only medicine I found that if you're not ready, it really will just be whatever you think it is, right? If you think it's just Harold and Kumar go to White Castle, then yeah, you'll just hang on the couch and smoke a blunt and have a goofy time, right? And, again, that's valid to a certain level, right? Like I enjoyed a lot of those experiences before I was aware of, the deeper power of the plant. And so I really feel like this plant is a mother, like it really will only show you what you're ready to see. And even when it shows you, it will show you with a loving hand. Never has cannabis bitch smacked me down like mushrooms will, right? And there's validity to being bitch smacked down sometimes, right? But cannabis is just not the plant that does that. And I'm very grateful for that. Again, if you take a 250 milligram edible when you're a newbie, yeah, you will definitely have a bitch smack of sorts. But unless you mess up royally, you're not going to have that experience unless you're ready for it. And for me, I see that the same as a coach, right? Like I can only coach someone to the level that they're coachable. And if someone is able to start, implementing the things we talk about, I just had a client, that I've been working with for quite a few months who really made a quantum leap. He'd been doing some great work, and I really love working with this guy. But he came onto a call and was like, dude, I've been meditating. I've been doing this. I've been doing that. And I just watched his whole energy shift, and the plan is very similar. When you start asking more of yourself and you start taking ownership over your own experience of emotion and life, etc., and you stop blaming the plant for why your life isn't ending up the way you want, or, oh, cannabis makes me lazy, or cannabis makes me anxious. Again, if you're doing it with cannabis, where else are you doing it in your life? You're probably doing it in your romantic relationship, making yourself the victim there. You're probably doing it with life. Maybe you're out there protesting and just, why me, right? And again, like you can live in that reality if you want. You have free will. But, again, that's not the path I've found to greatness. I'll say that, and again, I won't project on everyone, right? I'm not an objective guy, but again, it's so amazing how this plant really just mimics what I do with coaching a lot, to the level that you're able to implement and integrate. The plant's like, okay, we can move on to the next lesson. But if you don't, you'll just hang around lesson one for maybe your whole life, so it's really funny.
I could definitely see past versions of myself as you were describing those different things, and my experience with cannabis at the time absolutely reflected that. I think you really hit something powerful there when you said, about her motherly energy. I love how in the ayahuasquero traditions and in the Central and Southern American traditions, she was referred to as Santa Maria, the Holy Mother. Wow, how true is I've found that to be. And it's, obviously affects the way we approach her as a cultivator too. Like, yes, it should approach the way we experience and work with her as a consumer, right? Like if we're approaching it and recognizing that holiness in it, that should change how we're consuming and working with it. But as a cultivator, it's definitely had a huge impact, right? Like when that mindset shifts and we realize like, no, we're working with a holy medicine, regardless of what everyone else wants to call it, regardless of the fact that my license says, medical marijuana, like I use that term medicine in a broad sense, medicina, and the holistic sense, which to me, ultimately all healing starts with the etherical, and but that's the way she wants to be approached. And when she's approached that way, just like we are, right? Just like our partners are in a relationship, just like our children are, it's like animals, like you said, when we approach something and we recognize the divinity in it and we speak to it from that divine place of recognition. Even myself, when I'm looking in the mirror and having my self-talk, when I approach myself as a divine being, everything shifts. I feel different. The communication is different. I can feel everything open, right? But when we approach something as its littlest potential, and that's how we speak to it, we can't be surprised that that's what it turns into. That's I think it's such a huge important piece. And when you said that word mother, that word is a holy word, right? The mother. You're right. That's absolutely her energy. And just like a mother, if you need to be coddled, she might coddle you. If you want to learn wisdom, mothers sure have some wisdom. If you want to learn about health, I don't know about your mother, but my mother's constantly telling me to do things that are more healthy. You know what I mean? Like how we approach her is what we'll receive back in the most motherly, loving way. And what a gift, because that's not the energy everything always meets us with. What a beautiful world to have more holy mother energy in. That's a rare experience. And to be able to receive that is such a relief and a deep breath, hugely healing. Could you put a price tag on motherly healing?
I don't think so.
It's grander and bigger than we can understand, and the irony of it is she's looked at a lot of times culturally as, yeah, it's no big deal. Let's smoke some weed and do this and do that and do that. It's kind of similar to alcohol in the sense of like it's normalized, right? But it's, the healthy version, the non-caffeinated, the diet alcohol is kind of the way that like the industry likes to sell this thing. Yet underlying in that current is her nature. And that's the beauty, I think, of the widespread gathering of awareness around this sacred and holy plant is regardless of your awareness and attitude and understanding, regardless of mine, her nature's still going to be there. Her connection to that divine infinite web of nature's intelligence is going to be there. And if she's cultivated in the right way, it's there in a big way, and it's going to affect us. Because when we see something beautiful and when we experience something beautiful, nature takes over and awe kicks in. And awe is the beginning of every beautiful path. When awe hits, it causes us to stop, take that deep breath, and account for where we're at in space and time, and be aware of where we're moving and why. We've experienced it in grand ways with plant medicines, right? Like, in fact, to be able to cultivate a presence where the awe doesn't just completely knock us off the experience with certain plant medicines can be difficult. But that awe is kind of like nature's big sign of like, here we go. Get ready. Here comes something big and beautiful.
Yeah, man. 100%, and it reminds me of an analogy I think often, right? Like, if you are maybe a kid, right? Like when I was growing up, computers started to be a thing. So when I was like probably 12, 13, my dad got the first computer, the first computer for me, rather. He already had one, but, he got me this computer and I could go on AOL. I had to do dial up, right? And all these things. And so I didn't know how to use a computer, right? I just knew like, I'm going to get in this chat room, I'm going to go on websites, whatever. And so I ended up with a lot of viruses, right? As you do when you're 12 or 13, because I didn't know how to use the computer, right? No one had taught me how to use the computer. My dad did his best, right? But again, he wasn't a professional with computers either. So albeit, there was a certain point where my computer started going really slow and I didn't know why, right? I had no idea what was going on. And then my buddy Mark, who is like a savant, especially with computers, he was the same age as me, still is. He came over and all of a sudden started clearing out all the stuff and started the computer in safe mode. And after that, right, after that experience, I started to realize, whoa, like this computer can actually do way more than I thought it could. It could go way faster. It doesn't take nearly as long to load websites anymore. Like, what the hell just happened, right? And so when we look at cannabis, right, and we look at what its role is, for me, I see this ability to, as a human being, we don't know what we don't know, right? We can't remember exactly what it was like to be a kid, right? Without a lot of the baggage that we carry around, because it happens slowly, right? For the most part, someone passes away, life keeps going, we lose a job, life keeps going, a pet dies, life keeps going. And all of a sudden we may wake up to the fact of like, am I happy? Like, do I ever remember what being happy is? And, insert Dark Night of the Soul. If you go to Western Med, they're like, you just have a pill problem. Let me give you a pill for that, right? And the analogy being like, you just need to, close your tabs, or you just need this thing, right? That's just kicking the can along. It's just keeping you surviving, right? Try starting the computer over and starting it back up, right? None of it is actually tackling the root issue. So what cannabis does in a really interesting turn of events is that, once again, think about most people, especially in today's world, right? They don't have any delayed gratification. Everything's instant. Dopamine hits. So let's say someone is really struggling with depression, anxiety, or insert challenge here. And you start telling them, hey, I know this really good technique. It's called meditation. You're going to need to make an hour a day. Make sure you never skip a day. And within 3 months, you may be starting to feel pretty good, right? You might get a hit right away. That can happen. But traditionally, it takes a little longer. That person's going to go to the doctor and get a pill and feel some sort of better today, or have to work a lot and maybe feel better in 3 months. I'm going to go choose the pill, right? Because they don't know what it would be like to meditate for 3 months and what different vibration they'd be in. because they don't have a way to contextualize it. They don't remember what it was like to be in a vibration like that. And so now insert cannabis, right? You make an intention to really allow cannabis to show you what is possible beyond your current comprehended level of consciousness. You have an experience of, whoa, okay, which is like the analogy of starting the computer in safe mode, right? You start the computer in safe mode. Now all the viruses have gone to sleep and you're like, whoa, dude, this thing moves really fast. Oh my God, is this my potential without all these viruses on here? And also now I'm aware there's viruses on my computer, right? So now what cannabis does is now the effects wear off and you come back to your waking state of reality. Now, maybe a couple of things got cleared. Maybe you cleared some cookies, right? Or things like that. But for the most part, you're back to your normal operating system and you start realizing, okay, now I feel kind of depressed, anxious, whatever again, right? So the first type of person that I was like, oh, I must need more of that to feel that again, right? That's like mistaking the finger that points at the moon or sun as the moon or sun, right? Like, or worshiping the coach instead of what the coach is trying to share with you about yourself, right? Like these kind of patterns. But as you start to take more ownership and you realize, oh, all this plant is doing is showing me a glimpse of what is possible if I start doing the meditation and being more intentional and things like that. Well, now someone is able to be bought in. Now someone's going to go, I can experience more of that if I meditate. Done. I'll do that now. Even if it takes me 3 months, 6 months, a year to feel something, I know it's possible. And whenever I forget, I can go back to cannabis, get that reminder again, and then come back and know my why of what I'm working towards. And I think that is so fucking important in today's world because we are in a delayed or a instant gratification world. Everything is go, go, go. There's not a lot of emphasis around love and these kind of things. It's just how much can you produce? Can you be a good worker bee, et cetera? So a lot of people are moving so fast, they don't remember what it's like to have their snow globe settle and the beautiful image that appears within there, So 100% agreed, man.
I love your analogy of the computer because that hits really home with me as a guy that I've got your technological savvy and talents as your average 90-year-old. It's terrible. But that really hit home. And I had never thought of it that way before. As the same tool that I can only really just basically use, like literally check my email, do some Google searches. Other people can have used that to mathematically map out with perfection the stars, for Pete's sake. Like, I don't have the beginning of understanding on how to do that with a computer. Likewise, sticking with your analogy, plant medicines, including cannabis, are all just a door into the infinite wisdom and reality of the natural divinity around us. However we want to word that in the way that fits our perspective and understanding. They're just a door. And I thought of that as you were speaking as nowadays, cannabis for me, it's not all that much difference. If I was to sit here and smoke a joint in a prayerful manner, I wouldn't have all that much difference of an experience that I would if I ate 3 or 4 or 5 grams of mushrooms. As once that door opens and we're connecting with that other side that there's normally a veil on, connection is connection, right? Like that. And that's just from practice of using these tools. The same way that someone can take this machine that I can barely rudimentarily, operate and do all of these incredible mathematics with, and answer all of these universal deep, questions on an engineering type of plane. I don't have a clue how to do that. That doesn't mean it's not capable of that, right? It just means that the user interface is drastically different, and very much so the same way with cannabis, right? Do we want this to just be your tool for emails and Google? Then it can be. Do you want this to be your tool for mapping out the stars in an experiential way? Yes, it can be. What an incredible, incredible thing, because unlike the world of I guess, technology, there is a limitation there, right? Eventually, somewhere that has a stopping point and it had a definitive beginning point. These realms that we're working with plant medicines, the realms of love, as you put it, these are not finite, right? These are eternal. They're infinite. There is no ending place where you go, check, please, it's all over. No, it is an infinite realm of peace and joy and understanding and light and love and all of these things, and all of the tools that we can garner to be able to access and learn and evolve utilizing those tools are an incredible blessing. And cannabis might very well be the most gentle way of beginning to open those doors that nature has given us. If there's a more gentle way of peeking through that veil, I'm not aware of it.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean it doesn't exist. I'm not, but personally, there's what a gentle motherly way to jump into those realms, because some of the other ways can be abrupt, and there's abruptness has its place, right? It absolutely has its place. God bless it. It's helped me correct courses in drastic ways, and I'm incredibly grateful for it. But the gentleness, right, that cannabis allows us to be able to see these things is a gift unlike any other.
Yeah, 100%, man. Stated perfectly. And, I kind of had a second idea about the computer thing too, where part of the reason why it's so important, and part of the reason I was so excited to have you on, and part of the reason I talk about this stuff all the time, is because imagine if you had never learned what the internet was capable of, right? If you had never been taught anything, maybe you went to a yard sale, you bought a computer, you go home, you start it up, you see this thing called email, you're like, all right, cool, I guess I can do that. You see this thing called internet, you're like, what's that? You go on there, you don't really get it, right? So like you're just using it for email, and maybe you're starting to figure out how to put websites in there. Well, what if you all of a sudden find a person that comes over and they're like, oh, JR, you got a computer, man. You got on the internet yet? And you're like, yeah, I saw the icon for that, but what is it? And they're like, oh, dude, you can do tons of stuff with that. And they start showing you, right? And you're like, holy shit, like I could use this to track my farm data and like things like that. And they're like, yeah. And you're like, oh my God, I never knew that, right? Well, this is what we're doing here, right? Most of us grew up believing that cannabis was something either bad or something that you had to keep hidden or something you were going to get arrested over. And that's pretty much where it sat, right? It was this thing that was silly and giggly, but like none of us ever got a user manual for it. So we're walking around, and this is the analogy. I think I shared this with you on our intro call, but it's like Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, where Hagrid brings him to Diagon Alley and he's trying out wands in the wand shop. So he's a wizard. He's got a powerful wand, but he doesn't know how to use it. So he's just like, I don't know, doing things and shit's blowing off the shelves and whatnot. That's what most of us end up doing with cannabis, because we have no idea the power of not just cannabis, but also our own power. Like you were saying, I think the thing that most people are yet to recognize, and I'm still recognizing it myself. I don't know if there's ever a point in which I fully recognize this or anyone's meant to recognize it. But, again, like you were saying earlier, right? If you want cannabis to be this, it will be. If you want it to be that, it will be. Why? Because you are the one creating the reality in which you live in. And that, I think, is the thing that the power shouldn't be. And they are trying to keep us from at every state, right? So that's part of the reason why they want you to think you're a victim. Oh, the plant did this to you. You have no control over it, right? Or this person did that to you. Yeah, they got you upset, right? Not like the idea of, oh, I made me upset and I took things personally, when in reality, nothing is personal. And it's up to me to figure out in myself why that triggered me. It has nothing to do with the person or what they said. Even if they called me an asshole or a cocksucker or whatever the hell they called me, right? If I believe that, I'm going to get triggered over it. If I don't believe it, it's basically just letters and vocal sounds. I don't care at all. And that, I think, is what a lot of people are having a little bit of a hard grip releasing, because, it's scary to think that everything in your life is created through your own perspective. But also on the other side, it's amazing to know that every challenge, every opportunity, everything has been up to you and you alone. Because it's kind of like in Home Alone, right? Where Kevin wishes for his family to be gone, right? Because he's having some challenges with him. And he wakes up in the morning and he goes downstairs expecting to be leaving for that vacation they're going on, and no one's there. And he has that moment of fear. I made my parents disappear. Then it switches to love. I made my family disappear, because he realizes, oh, I did that. Oh my God, I'm powerful, right? So again, at the end of the day, like, these are important things that I remind myself of constantly, because again, I think the human condition is just, forgetting, remembering, and that's beautiful too. But the more that you can wake up within the dream, the more that you can really be conscious with the wand that you're using, right? Your intention, your own power, and anything you come into contact with, when you have that ability to recognize your own power and take ownership, is going to be monumentally more beneficial in your life, because any result you get is up to you to decipher, make your own meaning of, and then take that and go do something awesome and light up the world with. So, dude, just so amazing how we're so on the same page with this stuff, because it's been challenging to find people that, understand this stuff. Hamilton Souther is one of them. There's a handful of people that are really deep in this idea, this type of stuff we're talking about. But, it's been challenging to find people, especially with cannabis. I've never found anyone that can understand it like you do. So it's super cool, man. And I'm super, super humbling, to be able to learn from you and realize that there are so many people out there doing this stuff. And now it's our time to bring it to the world and allow our light to light up the world together and have a ton of fucking fun doing it. That's what life's all about, in my opinion.
Amen, brother. And we have to stand in that place and shine, and then the light has to be shined, right? If we allow it to be taken over by an industry, that's not our role, or we wouldn't be here. And I appreciate so much what you doing on the platforms you're doing it in. And it was a breath of fresh air for me to discover, because that's not my world. I'm a farmer, and for the majority of my life, farming something that wasn't safe for people to know about. And so, there are others like you out there, Ryan, with these beliefs. Most of us are just behind gates, deep in the woods somewhere, but now it's time to come out and have these conversations. Otherwise, the conversation is going to get dominated by something else entirely. And, that's fine. It's got its trip. It can do its thing, whatever, let that play out. But we have to fulfill our purpose as our individual, cosmic pinhead on the cosmic mycelium over here. We have to shine our light and go, no, it can be that. It can also be this. And I think so many people are hungry for that. That's why cannabis, even if it's not in the forefront of their consciousness, I think that's why so many people are attracted to cannabis. And then eventually, right, it leads to this place that you've so poignantly pointed out of self-discovery and self-awareness. And once that door goes open, once Alice tumbles down the rabbit hole, there's only one eventual outcome for Alice, right? Mm-hmm. There is no other way through that tunnel. She may be very confused along her path, but there is only one eventual outcome, and that is healing and connection and love. And that's the beauty, I think, of, it makes me laugh at, the term I grew up hearing in the great drug war was, it's a great gateway drug. And you know what? Yeah, it is, bud. It is a gateway medicine for discovering our potential. It is a gateway medicine for discovering our divinity. It is a gateway medicine to realize that we are nature. It is a gateway medicine for all of the grand realizations that are the point of our existence on this earth. It is the gateway for karmic destiny. Knock, knock, let it on in, man. I love it. Sure. Let's take that term back. Do you call it a gateway drug? Sure, you bet. It's a gateway. Let's open the damn gate.
Dude, mic drop, bro. That was fucking epic. And dude, it's so fucking true about the gateway thing. It's like, yeah, it's the gateway to you recognizing that this can be a gateway to whatever you consciously choose or unconsciously choose to create in your life. So be very aware, because with great power comes great responsibility, right? And the whole gateway drug thing, I think they, whether they knew this consciously or not, but, I think they set that up to be like, oh, you should be scared of this because, again, you have no free will when it comes to these medicines, right? But now we can actually take their statement and go, oh, wow, that's actually a pretty gangster statement. Thanks, guys, for doing that. It's pretty hilarious, actually, that we can take that back now and make it our own. And JR, this has been amazing, dude. I can't believe an hour and 15 has already flown by, dude. I want to make sure I'm definitely going to get you back on the show. You're going to be a regular guest for sure, dude. I'd love to co-create more and more magic with you. Can't wait for the day we get to meet in person too, and we get to trade some cannabis and, get connected together and laugh hysterically like brothers, soul brothers and all the cool stuff. But man, I want to give you ample time to pitch where people can find you, connect with you, where they can find out more about Blue Star Farms. Of course, you're in Oklahoma. I don't know what's going to happen if federal legalization is a thing or whatever in terms of shipping, but I imagine right now, if you're around Oklahoma, definitely come out there to get JR stuff. But, again, where can people find you, connect with you? And is there a way, like, do you do any hemp or anything you can ship across state lines lawfully, or is right now Oklahoma the place to go if they want to find some really high quality, clean, green, certified, regenerative living cannabis?
Yes, brother. So cannabis here in Oklahoma, you have to have a medical card. We're all over the state, though. If you have that medical card and you're in Oklahoma, there's a program in Oklahoma not a lot of people know about. You can get a temporary card here. You
Oh.
can get a temporary card, see a doctor. It costs 100 and some odd bucks. A lot of dispensaries help you do it real quick. It doesn't take much time, and boom, you've got a card, and it doesn't matter where you're from. That you can get a temporary card here. I fully anticipate, because of great organizations like Orca, Oklahomans for Responsible Cannabis Action. Jed Green is the man, absolutely a true advocate for this medicine, not doing something to build his pockets. This man is a true advocate, the likes of which are rare that I've seen in this entire movement coast to coast. So shout out to Orca. I believe because of efforts they're working on, we will be an adult use state before long. And so Oklahoma is the only place at the moment to experience our medicine that can be purchased here. However, I'm available to teach, and I love to teach. And Ryan, I look forward to working with you, and I appreciate your work, and I'm all about it, man. We are absolutely on the same mission, and whatever I can do to support you, this is reciprocal because we're on the same path. Supporting you is supporting me. We are tribe, and let's build that tribe, make it better. I'll hand out my email if there's people that want to do a workshop. My email is jr@bluestarag. That's AG, bluestarag.com. The website is bluestarfarms.com. You can learn more about our farm. If you forget that email, you can also, it'll eventually find its way to me through the contact us form there on bluestarfarms.com. We're on Instagram at Blue Star Farms Oklahoma. Same on Facebook. We're trying to utilize all of these tools to help spread this message because this is a powerful, powerful, beautiful healing medicine for us and all our relations. And the cultivation is a huge part of that, and cultivating in a way that honors and respects this medicine, just as you've talked about. And so that's a great tool as well, even though folks might not be able to purchase our medicine depending on their location. That's okay, brother. I will come to you. Let's get some folks together. We'll do a workshop. We'll show you how to cultivate in a way that not just this medicine, but in a way that you can close the gate on your farm and feed your family and feed your tribe and grow all of the medicine and food that you need. That's true liberty. That's true freedom. So I'm here to help encourage that anywhere that it's wanted.
Dude, I love that, man. I am so fucking stoked and over the moon to collaborate with you, to learn from you. Again, with my own experience, I've been a smaller, farmer, right? I've never done like a large size. I've worked on a large size grow, but again, life support type grow at the dispensary. So, again, I am so excited to be able to potentially collaborate in retreats and things like that, because I really want people to get their hands in the soil, start feeling the life force in there, be able to touch growing cannabis plants and see what the energy is, and be able to see what plants look like, feel like, act like, etc. when they're being grown in the way that we articulated in this episode, versus when they go to a dispensary grow and they start seeing life support cannabis and things like that. And for me, it pains me. That was one of the reasons I left the dispensary. It just started to get too hard to be in there, because it's essentially reminding me of the Matrix, it reminded me of fuck, we're in little pods just being siphoned for life force energy. It's just crazy, man. So JR, I have one last question for you, man. And I ask everyone that comes on the show, right? And typically I'll do it. Actually, I'll do it the regular way, actually. So let's say someone listens to this episode and they're really excited to look into cannabis and other psychedelics in their own life. What is the one piece of advice you would suggest to them to allow them to use the proper discernment in figuring out whether cannabis or these other medicines are right for them in their life at this time?
So this will probably be a different answer than maybe even you were expecting. In today's world of medicines, we hear a lot about microdosing and being very conscious of the space and having the right tools around and all of that. And I agree with all of that very much. At the same time, I also believe in nature and surrender. So what would I say? I would say jump all in, throw fear away. Fear has a place, but its place and has nothing to do with your healing. Jump into the abyss completely. Because inside that abyss, as terrifying as it is, that's where all that you need in that moment is laying, waiting for you. But it takes the heart of a warrior with great courage to truly jump into it. So what would I say? I would say quit dabbling and jump.
Yes, dude, I love it, man. It reminds me of that Joseph Campbell quote: "The cave you fear most to enter holds the treasure you seek." Right? Or another way to say it, the best way out is through. Or, within uncomfortability, we can find our comfort and become unfuckwithable, or be the eye in the storm. All these different quotes that you hear from different places are speaking to that exact notion. And so, dude, I love that. And guys, this has been such an amazing episode. This one touches very near and dear to my heart. I've already showed you guys enough and shared enough about what JR means to me in my life, and being able to do this episode and the future episodes we're going to do, and really being able to bring this and magnetize our power out into the world. And we want you guys to join us. Definitely hit up JR. Keep track of everything he's doing. If you're in Oklahoma, definitely grab one of those temporary cards if you're not a resident, and try out some of his stuff so you can see for yourself what the difference is, right? I think JR would agree with me when I say, don't believe anything we say, right? Go experience it for yourself. Use your own discernment, use your own power, and come to that conclusion on your own, because nothing that we said here today is going to make up for the direct experience of you being able to connect with truly love-grown cannabis. And so if you guys loved the episode, we'd love a 5-star review. Helps get the show out to more people, which we are so grateful for. And as always, guys, wherever you are in the world, I hope you are having the best day of your entire life. And as always, may the source be with you. Much love, everybody. Peace.